Can keep it
now
going.
We can keep it going.
Now we can keep
I don't want to keep it going.
Good.
No, Senator,
I bet you don't.
Senator Elizabeth Warren is still fighting the good fight when it comes to protecting consumers, despite her brainchild, the CFPB, Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, being gutted by the Trump administration. She's sounding the alarm about less obvious risks Trump's tariffs impose, namely price gouging. Here she is getting the best of MAGA-loving Joe Kernan on CNBC. After the clip, we'll take a look at an example of price gouging that Elizabeth Warren is warning us about.
Remember our last conversation. This is almost like part two. Remember our last conversation about price gouging. So now you got another way to say that corporations are doing that.
Well,
but egg prices came down, inflation came down. It seems like the corporations only gouge when you say they're gouging, and then they're unable to at other times.
So I know you don't want to listen to me on this, but listen to Jerome Powell on this. The example he gave on Friday was from the last time that Trump's tariffs went into effect. And he said there was a tariff on washing machines. No surprise, the price of washing machines went up. But the shocking part is the price of dryers went up as well, even though there was no imposition of tariffs on those. You tell me what that is, except for price gouging.
Trying to figure that out. Unless you have a clothesline out back, you need the dryer, though, Senator.
You need the dryer, but the price doesn't go up on dryers. The cost of dryers didn't go up.
Growing up.
Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The times. Yeah.
Totally. And I love the smell.
I love the way you're changing the subject here. That is an example of price gouging.
They told me we had less than a minute.
They
said we had less than a minute left.
Now they say we can keep it going.
Now we can keep it going.
Now we can keep it going.
I don't want to keep it going.
Good.
No, Senator,
I bet you don't.
Oof, she had him on the ropes, pulling out a concrete example of price gouging. Him bringing up the clothesline thing is a perfect example of why price gouging works. In a consumer's brain, washers and dryers are tied together because you need them both. If the cost of washers have to go up because of tariffs, then the consumers assume the cost of dryers will also go up. But if the cost of production for a dryer doesn't go up, like in this example, there not being tariffs on dryers, then that extra that the consumers are paying is just straight up profit for the washer dryer company. Price gouging isn't just when the price goes up. It's artificially creating or extending conditions that allows a company to raise the price higher than necessary and use some external reason for cover. Take the price of eggs, for example. The DOJ is in the middle of an investigation into Cal, Maine, the largest egg producer in the US, over suspicions that they've been using reoccurring avian flu outbreaks in order to gouge the price of eggs.
Now to the soaring cost of eggs. As a source tells us, the Department of Justice is investigating possible price fixing. ABC's Alexis Christoforous joins us with this. Good morning, Alexis. And you told me this isn't the first time for some of these companies.
That's right, Janae. Good morning. So the U.S. Justice Department is in the early stages of investigating the country's largest egg producers for what some are alleging is a, quote, coordinated effort to restrict supply and inflate prices. Now, we know consumers are paying record prices for eggs, some as high as $10 a dozen, as that devastating bird flu outbreak forces the industry to kill tens of millions of egg-laying hens. But while consumers and businesses are shelling out more for eggs, some egg companies are raking in record profits. Cal, Maine, that's the nation's largest egg producer, saw profits more than triple last quarter, up more than 340% compared to just a year ago. Now, back in 2023, a jury trial ordered Cal, Maine and three other companies to pay $53 million for unlawfully inflating prices. It's a verdict those companies are challenging, and Cal, Maine has not yet responded to our request for comment. Now, as for when we might see prices start to come down, experts say with an egg-centric holiday like Easter right around the corner, don't expect relief anytime soon. The USDA predicts prices could rise another 40% this year, and even if supply rebounds, experts say prices could stay high as grocers and restaurants try to make back some of their lost profits. Guys?
All right, Alexis, a lot to follow there. We appreciate it.
Now, you might be saying to yourself, hey, we did this whole song and dance before. We know why eggs are more expensive right now. It's because of the avian flu. But maybe that's exactly what the egg companies want you to think. Maybe they know that consumers are willing to pay whatever price they see at the grocery store for eggs if they think the prices are high because of something nobody can control. The bird flu.
Let me kind of go through a really brief little cycle with you. The bird flu causes this supply shock, which causes prices to double, then send market signals to existing egg producers to expand their production. to take advantage of the high price. In a funny way, the high prices that we observe right now may cause low prices eventually. Producers right now that have healthy hens, you can bet they're expanding their production.
But there are some troubling signs that point to this not being the full story. This is from an article from Farm Action US, a nonpartisan advocate group for farmers who initially petitioned the government to open up an investigation into Cal-Maine. They say the egg industry, grocers, and analysts have attributed high egg prices to the worst outbreak of avian flu in American history. It has resulted in the death of more than 150 million US chickens, turkeys, and egg-laying hens since 2022. And while that sounds like an insanely high number, it is, but it's in line with the trend of egg-laying hens going down since 2019. You may notice from this chart on screen that we're roughly around the same number of egg-laying hens as we had in 2016. The cost of eggs is nearly twice what it was entering 2016 at the end of the avian flu outbreak that occurred that year. If we have roughly the same amount of egg-laying hens and are producing roughly the same amount of eggs, then why are prices twice as much? Remember that price gouging requires some reason for the price to be going up regardless. The gouging part comes from the price that you set versus the price that the market conditions expect, and that only works if you have some undue influence on your competition. And when it comes to eggs, that might just be the case. Cal-Maine Foods, the largest U.S. egg producer and one of the few publicly traded egg companies, has reported rising profits from the rise in egg prices and saw its stock surge in the years since the bird flu outbreak. Antitrust authorities often open investigations when high prices appear to stem from unusual disruptions to supply chains, said Lisa Phelan, an antitrust partner at Morrison Forrester. There can be anti-competitive efforts to deal with the crisis, and that is not okay either, she said. In a letter that Farm Action sent to the FTC, the group alleged that the companies were being slow to rebuild their egg-laying hen flocks in order to restrict supply and sustain inflated prices. Not only that, but production becomes more efficient over time, which you would expect to combat inflation and keep prices relatively stable. But in a situation like with eggs, where there's only a few competitors in the space, it's very easy to artificially control when the crisis is over.
The second and third quarters of 2023, corporate profits drove over half of inflation, about 53% of inflation. Just as a point of comparison, over the last 40 years before the pandemic, profits drove just 11% of inflation. And I think what's interesting over this period is that although consumer prices have risen, the price of inputs has gone down, and also the labor share of income has gone down. And so there's still plenty more of savings to pass on to consumers, but there's also plenty more to share with workers.
If only there were some sort of bureau that was made to protect the finances of consumers. They could have called it the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, CFPB. Sure would have rolled off the tongue. I'm Tony Hinderman with Really American, and I'll catch you next time.